Welcome to the January event for the USITT Midwest Speaker Series. Tonight we are talking about wardrobe, that mysterious backstage element that often people get thrown into doing with very little training and wind up figuring a lot of things out. So we're going to demystify some things tonight and talk about what that's like as a career. So I'm your host, Jana Henry Funderburk, she, her pronouns. And I'll allow our guests to introduce themselves. Randy, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Randy Handley, he, him pronouns, and I am the costume shop manager at DePaul University. And before this, I spent years on tour doing wardrobe and years in Las Vegas doing wardrobe.
We won't say how many.
That's why it says years.
Mhm, mhm. Yep. Yep. Thanks. Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Brady. I live in New York City and I'm a dresser, costumer, supervisor, laundry person, just about all of it. Again, I toured for a very long time, worked on Broadway, made the switch to TV, and then I'm now back on Broadway. And I also work in the news.
Yeah. Um, so I was gonna say my first question is, but um, what skill sets do you think make someone a good dresser?
You have to be able to read the room and read the people.
Keep
And you
talking.
have to read what they aren't saying, and you have to read behind what they are saying.
Yeah.
Like you may be getting yelled at, but you're not the one that's actually getting yelled at. You just happen to be getting all of that energy. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And other people got upset about it. I'm like, it's not about me. This is not about me right now. I just happen to be the focus of it. Like she needed somebody to take something out on, and I got lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I mean,
that's really
I would say like major skills to be a dresser is patience, humility, um, the ability to think on your feet and react quickly, problem solving, um, and a bit of empathy as well. And like Liz said, you have to be able to read the room. So you have to be able to know your actor in and out and what they need and anticipate. Not wait for them to ask for their bottle of water, just have it there ready for them to go. Or, always be two steps ahead of them.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you have to have no ego as a dresser. It's not about you, it's about the person you're dressing. Um, and making sure that they have a good show. Uh, Somebody who's kind, I think, uh, and willing to be vulnerable.
you also have
As
to be an advocate for them because sometimes they won't be an advocate for themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
That's great. I think that's a great description of it. Um, so I'll say it's a very different experience. I'll be more specific here. So Liz,
Yes.
if you are dressing, you just came off of Once Upon a Mattress.
Yes.
What's a typical day for you?
Um, it actually kind of varies on the day. There were days I was in early for day work, which means you go in and you prep the clothes, you maintain them. I ironed a lot of linen dresses, a lot of linen tunics, some horrible silk suits.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's a 4 hour call. And then you have a little bit of a break, and then you have your hour before where you do your preset. So you set up some of your quick changes if you need to. You pass out your laundry to your actors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if For them, I didn't have to do it as for much, but if I'm a star dresser, I will like fill the kettle, turn that on, fill up the water bottles, put them wherever they need. If they have mail, put their mail out, um, that type of thing. And then half hour happens and you hang out in case somebody needs you.
talk about that. How do you hang out during that half hour? Like,
Mm,
how do you be,
how do I be?
yes, present and not present?
Um, Usually you're either sometimes in the room, if there is room for you in a room and they're comfortable with that, or you're outside the room in a chair or on a stair, sitting in a stairwell. Um, you can have things to do. I'll tend to read or knit.
Uh-huh.
If they end up having food delivered, I'll go run and get the food, even if it's an ensemble, because a lot of times I'm also a star dresser, so that's just ingrained in me. Like they have something that gets dropped off, I go and pick it up
Yeah.
and I bring it to them. Um, yeah, and when they're ready, sometimes they're ready, it varies. You had what you set up in the show, so this person will get ready at this time at like 5 till, because they have to go to wigs. Sometimes people get dressed before they go to wigs. Sometimes they get dressed after they go to wigs. Um, so yeah.
Um, and then during the run of the show, what are you doing?
Um, you're running to cues. You're on mattress. I would walk up with the ladies because I had two cues at the top of the show. And then I would go down and set up my next change. And I would wait for them and they would come change. And then I usually had some time, so I would either hang out with them if we were chit-chatting, or I would go back out to my chair and read or knit.
Yeah. Just being present without,
You gotta be present, yeah.
right. And that is a hard thing to do, I think, to be present without um putting yourself into conversations that are maybe not for you, or distracting your performer from getting ready, or
Yeah.
right.
And
That can
and
be,
sometimes that does happen,
yeah.
especially if you all get kikiing and
Uh-huh.
that it does happen.
Right. Yeah. And that's then where our supervisor is going to come in. Randy, supervisor, shaking fingers, right?
Oh, I've run the gamut. I've done it all. I should know better, but
And then so okay, curtain call done. Yay, great show. Now what?
you get them out of costume.
Mhm.
Um, and we have a 15-minute grace period. So we have 15 minutes to get them out of costume, gather their laundry, and like hang up their costumes, spray their costumes, anything that we need to do, gather their laundry, get it to the wardrobe room and sort it.
Uh-huh.
And then you leave.
So it's a very quick end of show.
Yes. And if you go over the 15 minutes, we get what's called the hour after, which I've actually had on a lot of shows recently. When I was at the Wiz, we were very shorthanded. They started out with a 6-month tour with 8 dressers, I think, and we went down to 6. So we
Hmm.
had the hour after, everybody got the hour after because everybody was doing something.
Yeah.
And the way the theater was set up, I had people at one point, well, all on on 2 separate floors, but then it kind of changed what those 2 floors were. So I had more that I had to travel. So
Mhm.
I had one person that would head up early to get one of my people out of costume because, I had a line of Tin Man and a witch. So
Yes. It's not a t-shirt and a pair of shorts,
no,
right?
no.
It's a lot to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Um, so I was Randy as a somebody who was supervising on when you were on MJ1, right? That's a
Mhm.
set show, much like a Broadway show, not a touring show. Um, what did you do as supervisor?
You name it, I did it. So as supervisor on a large scale production like a Cirque show, uh, I had, I think max crew I had was like 32 on my crew. I had an assistant. I had some stitchers during the day, some shoe technicians during the day, wig technicians during the day. And then at night, I had during the day, I had one LED costume technician. And then at night, I had 9 dressers, 2 hair and makeup, and one LED costume technician in the evening, and one costume technician in the shop. Um, and so my job in that wardrobe department was to do scheduling, hiring, firing, working with the artistic director to solve problems, always asking for this person to do this, that person to do that. And then my lovely job was to say, well, you just requested $30,000 a year in costumes, and our budget doesn't equal that.
Mhm.
And I had a lead dresser who dealt with the running of the show. I looked at my job as kind of the future of the show. If I was doing the day-to-day, then there's nobody to plan the future. And so I really stayed out of the running of the show and the day-to-day operations. My assistant dealt with a lot of that, but I really dealt with the future of it. At times, I would design wigs, I would design costumes. A big part of my job was to make costumes last longer. So once we opened that next January, I was in Montreal looking at fabric swatches, and I changed probably 75% of the fabrics in the show to be something that was more sustainable.
Mhm.
To be a dresser at a Cirque show, you kind of can't be a dresser in Broadway, if that makes sense. I found every time I hired a dresser from a Broadway show, they had a really hard time because most of the time on a Broadway show, you are in Jana's track if Jana is out. At a Cirque show, if Jana's out, then there's 10 other people that are covering all the things Jana does. And so you literally never have the same show twice. And so that mindset is hard for a lot of people who are like, well, when I did Phantom, I ran the Phantom track every time, and no matter who was in it, that was the Phantom track. And so that takes very careful orchestration and organization and communication, a lot of communication. And so a lot of my job is to create systems to put in place for my staff to easily understand, or an on-call dresser to come in and be able to slide into a track.
Yeah. So when we talk about tracks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but when we talk about tracks, what are we talking about? For those who maybe have not done wardrobe or have maybe done it on a simpler show, what is a track? Liz, you want to talk about what a
It
track is?
is who you are taking care of during the show, which means you get their laundry, you see if they need anything before the show. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a quick change with them during the show, because sometimes that like you might be busy with something else, so somebody else will have to pick up a quick change. That happened with me on mattress. One of my girls had a change while I was already had another
You're right.
change. So Amanda got taken care of by another dresser. And we help them when they come off stage, whether it be a 5-minute change or a 23-second change. We're there and
Mhm.
we help them change the clothes.
Yeah.
And you kind of have some supervisors do. Oh, that's a blast from the past. Oh my goodness. And on tour, we get locals and we would hand these out. I myself will get kind of depends on how the show is set up. The Wiz, it was a tour, so it did a 6-month tour, so it came in and it had a track, and they changed a few things. But if it's a brand new show, you get you have who you pass out laundry to and you take care of. And then the supervisor that I've worked with a lot, does zone. So
Uh-huh.
I would be stage left, and whoever would come in stage left, I would take care of. And if I was dressed like there, I dressed Katrina Link, who won the Tony that year. So I would do all of my stuff with her.
Mhm.
One of my other guys had a coat handoff with somebody else on the other side of the stage because I was in a quick change booth on the other side. Um, some supervisors do man to man. So I'm like with that specific person every time.
Wardrobe, it's just like sports, right? In a manner's own. You gotta
You
do.
never know. You
Always
never
on
know.
defense.
That's
whatever
right.
that means. Sports ball.
Uh-huh.
And
That's
sometimes
right.
you have to help other dressers. They're like, and you have to go grab something, or somebody goes out in the middle of the show,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everybody kind of has to pitch in and help.
Keep you on your toes. Um, Speaking of pitching in and helping, so Liz stepped in and did some wardrobe on Stereophonics recently, which
I also went into a wonderful world.
so which those who saw last month's uh speaker series on stage management, Andy Burns was one of our speakers on that one. So there was just that connection of we
And I did
just
that cold. I went
yes.
in, I got the call that day saying, can you come in and run this track cold tonight?
Mm-hmm.
And I was at another job. And I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I went in. And that's a long show. And when you've been up since 5 a.m, you're a little like,
Uh-huh.
you just get handed notes like what Randy had, or a big sheet of paper that's, or multiple sheets of paper
Mm-hmm.
stuck together. And you read it and you got to figure it out.
And you pray to the wardrobe gods.
That's where you really hope that that paperwork is accurate,
Yeah.
That's why it's always got to be updated.
So these cards right here for everybody to see, these are dresser cards. And Liz and I actually toured together on Fosse. And then as soon as she got there, I said, I'm leaving. Bye.
Literally in front of people I'd never met before. He's like, hi, great to see you. Bye.
So we had a month together. But these were track cards. And they have, each card has a change on there. And these were key to doing a one-night tour in different cities. And ease of use is really important when it comes to these cards. And I'm sure Liz could tell you a story about these cards and how once I left, things changed and the new cards weren't so useful. And so making your paperwork easy to understand, thinking about it in the terms of somebody off the street is coming in to run your track, or somebody who has never run the show before has to run your track. And so making it easy and simple is key.
I'm interested to know, Liz, had you even seen the show?
No, I saw it. I think I watched it from the front my first night there.
Okay.
And then I trailed all of the dressers.
No, you're talking about.
We had 12 dressers?
No, I was talking about Stereophonics.
6.
Oh, Stereophonics. No, I hadn't even seen it. It.
So you can't even sort of go like, oh, I know this happens in this song or this. Yeah.
Right. And they're talking about these songs. They're like bright. And I'm like, and backstage, there's no run order. I'm like, can you at least post a run order?
Talk to that ASM.
Help a girl out. But like what happened was one of the female, the woman that dressed the 2 females called out. So one of the dressers that was already there, I think she'd been a swing previously, maybe. And she bumped over and I did her track.
Okay.
So if I had questions, I would just holler up the stairwell.
You had someone there who knew what you were supposed to be.
And Dawn, who's the supervisor, who I've worked with her as a code, like we've been dressers before. She's come to help me out on the TV show when I was on the TV show. I didn't ask her to come work on the TV show, but she was is the supervisor on that show. So she would also take me to the queue that first time. And then that weekend I came in and learned, because that was a Friday night. And then Saturday, Sunday, I came in and learned the female track.
So let's talk a little bit about television. Liz, you worked on, was FBI? Was that
FBI, the original? Yeah. I was the shop costumer.
Okay. So talk about that working on television and how that's different.
Well, I can only set is like when you're in tech. You sit there and you sit there and you sit there and you sit there, which is why I'm not a big fan of being on set.
Mm.
I've had several people say that would be a good personal, which means I have one person and I take care of them. That's it. Um, but in the costume shop, I would prep clothes for fitting, So if they came in from shopping and they were wrinkly, I would steam them. Um, I would do restock. I would size things, restock things. I would do laundry. I would write up dry cleaning for background, because I mostly did stuff with the background shop. I didn't do, I would write up sometimes for the main characters, for the day players, because we had our heroes, which were all the leads, which got written up by somebody else, and then we had the day players, and then we had the background. I would pull clothing. So for us, we had a lot of uniforms, so I would pull anybody that was non-SAG NYPD, because SAG gets paid more to bring a uniform. ERTs, which are like the crime scene investigators, they have a special uniform, so I get sizes, cut it out, stick it on a tag. Bag, a shirt, a pair of pants, a belt, boots, a jacket of some sort, depending on the weather. Put it on a rack and load it on a truck.
So working on, I mean, just that it's an obvious thing, but I want to,
Yeah.
working on a television show, it's a bit like designing a show every day, right? Like we have new characters, we
Yeah,
have,
but I don't do that.
you're not
Yeah.
designing. No, no, but
Yeah.
so new things coming in and old things going out
Yeah.
uh every day to put these looks together to be to get to set and be the
Yeah.
right size and have the right belt
And
and the
that, and you have to learn how to read the tag and look at the photo, because people they would give me their dress size, and then I
uh-huh.
would look at their measurements and I'd be like, the one does not equal the other.
Yeah.
Um, so I would usually go with whatever was larger.
Hmm.
Um, and then some of the clothing would fit differently. Like we had different types of ERT pants for the women, and some of them fit better than others, and they fit differently. Um, and you
It's
have,
one of
so especially with the uniform boots, I'm not so good at it now because I've been away a little bit. I got good at converting men and women sizes, because if we'd run out of boots for with the women, I'd have to go pull from the men.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that make it work, figure it out, has to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
kind of
I
thing.
call that a pull and pray.
And sometimes if you're lucky enough and you have enough stock and you don't have a big pull for that specific thing coming up, you can, I would also have a rack of extras to pull from in case, something terribly wrong did happen. Um, because also, even though the actors would send in updated measurements, casting wouldn't necessarily update their database.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different kind of problem solving, but it also falls in line. So,
Yeah.
um, and you both toured together, well, together, and separately,
Mhm.
um, with different shows. What, talk a little bit about touring a show. Particularly you mentioned, one-nighters. How does that job look different than a sit-down show that runs for months and months or years and years?
Well, there are definitely upsides and downsides. Um, there are bus and truck one-nighter tours, generally non-equity, um, lower pay scale, more work.
Mhm.
And then you get into your like week stays, where the show is there for a week. And if you're lucky, maybe you're there 2 weeks. And then, or maybe it's split weeks. And then a single week is special. Then you get into kind of your larger Broadway tours where people are there from like a month. When I toured with Cirque, we would set up our own tent. So we were there for 6 weeks, 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, depending on the venue. And so each of those come with different problems and different surprises and awards. I think with a bus and truck tour, a one-nighter tour, I know for myself, that is where I learned how to create systems to make my job go fast and to make my job work for me instead of me working from my job. Fosse was my very first tour right out of college. And it took about 3 months to get that show to a point where I wasn't rushing at curtain to finish everything. I think we got it down. We would get up at 8, get in the building. We were done by noon and had the rest of the afternoon to chill.
Talk about what you did between 8 and noon.
So between 8 and noon, that is if the truck was unloaded on time, we would set up our area and kind of find where the wardrobe room was going to be that day. Generally, it was in a dressing room, in the basement somewhere. So we would have all our road cases put down there, and we would start prepping everything, pulling out dirty laundry, setting up dressing rooms, pulling out makeup boxes, and putting clean laundry out, towels, all that jazz. We would be doing laundry during the day, doing repairs, fixing shoes. And then once the stage got to a certain point, all of our costume gondolas lived along the back wall of the stage. And so we had to wait until they were done setting up to a certain point and brought in that black curtain at the back of the stage to then go set up our gondolas. And once we did that, it was lunchtime. And then we kind of had the afternoons off to chill out for a few hours. And then take a nap. Yes. Take a bath. Shower. Do our own laundry. And so then we would come back to about 5 or 6, we would come back to the show. And we would meet our dressers. Sometimes the day people were different than the night people. So we would meet our dressers. And we had 6 dressers on that show, and I got 3 and Liz got 3. I took care of the women in the show. Liz took care of the men. And that's simply because my very first assistant on that show couldn't do hair, and I could. So I said, I'll take the women. And it was great. It was fun. And so we would spend the first little bit of the day training the dressers and taking them through their dressing tracks. We would take them around the stage and show them where the changes were going to happen. And then we would pray that the show did its thing. And since it was a bus and truck tour, we had the dancers preset their own costumes. Because I said, it's a one-night tour. If you want the right stuff to be in the right place, I just need you to put it in the basket, and we'll make the baskets go where the baskets need to go. But there was no way that it was going to be successful if they didn't do that. Just with the different people over and over. When we sat the show down in Paris for 2 months, then the dressers could actually just do the presets. The actors didn't have to do it. So that was really great for them. I think with the longer tours, so with Cirque big top tours, we had 2 dressers, and those tracks were so intense, I would spend a week backstage with them training them. And a big part of that is because of safety for the acrobats and safety for the dressers, because the backstage areas there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of danger zones. I was backstage one night and my foot got caught in a cable and up went my leg. And the apparatus was going on stage and like they had to set it back down. And so I was standing where I normally stood, but it just happened that that cable was in the right spot. And so we would spend about a week training them, and then it was all theirs. So the cool thing about touring though is you leave your staff behind. You may never see these people again. And so the cool part of that is if they're awful, you don't ever have to see them again. But if they're great, you want to see them again in the next city or
Right.
the next time you come through town. And so it's a double-edged sword because you meet some really great people, but also you don't have to deal with people who maybe aren't the best at the job or, you know, again, with like a bus and truck tour, sometimes you're getting people from like Manpower or a job service place who have no interest in theater.
Even
They're
the
just that,
shelter,
yeah,
like we'd have people from the shelters, and they would want load out to go longer, or yeah, load out to go longer. So
They got more time.
yeah.
yeah,
So there's bonuses to all the different ones. You know, I learned a lot doing a bus and truck, and it was
Yeah.
fun. And I was young enough to have it be fun.
Yeah, I think there's
Couldn't do
that.
it now. Couldn't do it now.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's that's a fair answer. You know, you get old and you get cozy in your ways, right?
yes.
Um, so when you're touring, um, I've had several different people who I've talked to who have talked about those ways of finding cozy, making a hotel room your home. What tricks did you have?
I had a blanket, which is actually right here. I also had a blanket that my mom made me with me on tour. I By the time I got to the Mary Poppins tour, because we would stay in residence in a lot, I had my own coffee mug, and I would take my coffee mug down to breakfast. And I cannot tell you how many guests, where did you get that mug? Like, it's mine. It's mine. I would travel a vase and I would get flowers,
Yeah,
things like that, candles.
yeah.
Yeah.
Creating those tactile feelings of
Yep.
making a home, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When I toured with Cirque, we would get corporate apartments. And so it always felt like home because the corporate apartments kind of always looked the same.
Hmm.
And I think it's called Oakwood or something. They
Yes.
had this
Yeah.
this orange and brown and white striped vase that was in every apartment across America. We had a collection. But you know, so you kind of felt like, oh, okay, this is home. There are dishes. Oh, the maid service. I tell you what,
Spoils you.
spoils you. Rotten. That's one of the best things is having a maid come in and clean your house.
Yeah.
I mean, when I did the tour of Zarkana in New York City, I was on tour in New York City, which is weird. And I lived in the Silver Towers, which is on 42nd and 11th, on the 42nd floor of a high rise that had floor to ceiling windows. It had its own washer and dryer. Like it was bougie living in New York. And it was the nicest apartment I've probably ever lived in on tour. And so that immediately felt like home.
Yeah. We also hear people talk about traveling a crock pot or an Instapot or something where you can cook for yourself.
When I was on tour with Sesame, there was a couple and they had one entire suitcase that was the kitchen. So they had a hot plate
Uh-huh.
and they had things that they could cook on the hot plate. People there was a cookbook about how to make things in a coffee pot, how to do things in a micro, like,
Yeah.
yeah. They traveled to VCR to tape things, and then on the bus we would watch thing, you know.
They nobody knows what a VCR is anymore, Liz.
They can look it up.
I didn't want to be the one to say it.
They can look it up.
when when I toured with Cirque in the Big Top, I drove from city to city, so I had my car in every city, and I think I had 9 suitcases, and I would just load my car. I had art supplies, I had sewing supplies, a lot of which I never used, but they were there if I wanted them.
Mhm.
We
So that really helped.
I managed to find a spot to travel a small Christmas tree. It's like the things that you can find to the space to ferret things away. And
Yeah.
then you get to the end of the tour and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't realize I had this much stuff.
And how am I going to get it home?
Yeah.
That's all right, Um, yeah, there is that part. How do I get it home? But so what kind of advice would you have if someone is thinking maybe they would like to tour
Do it.
and do work,
Do it.
do
Yeah.
it,
Do it.
right?
Go out
Um,
there and do it. If you hate it, you did it once and you can
You
go
know.
home and do over.
yeah,
But I know a lot of people in this business who are like, well, I didn't tour when I was younger and now I can't do it. Do it while you're young. Get out there. It could be a lifestyle for you. I mean, I know people, we call them road dogs, people who have been out on the road for 30 years.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, she, Clista, Clista. Right, Liz? Do you know Clista? She was on, oh,
Maybe.
maybe she left Fosse maybe before you did, but she's been on tour forever. And she got to a point where she was like, I'm done. So she went and bought a restaurant in her hometown. But it's only open in the summers. Well, most tours don't run in the summers. And so now she goes and she'll cook all summer, run a restaurant, and then she goes back out on tour in the winter months. And she loves it. She's having a great time. And um, it's an amazing experience. It's a great way to see the country on somebody else's dime, or the world. I've been everywhere. I lived in Russia for 2 months, worked at the Kremlin, and this is pre what's his butt, but yeah, that one. And it was such an amazing experience. What I will say is, like, if you do go on tour, take every advantage of visiting the city you're in. If you're not on a bus and truck tour.
I was gonna say, if you're on a one-nighter, you'll see the one restaurant, and that's about it.
Yeah, but take every advantage of it. You make some lifelong friends. You learn more about yourself than you ever wanted to. You'll walk away from it with a fat pocket if you are smart with your money. My assistant on Zarkana, she was very smart with her money. By the time she left that tour, she had $100,000 in her bank account because she was like, I'm saving every penny. And we were making a lot of money. I will say that. We were getting paid hand over fist for all the overages. But she was able to set up her life really well by being on tour. Do it.
I think particularly, and I didn't say this when we started, but Liz and Randy were both students of mine many moons ago. But I think particularly, when you're 22 and you're leaving college and you don't really want to move back home, but you also don't really have a destination place that you think you want to be. I think touring is just a great way, like I said, get some money in your pocket if you're smart about how you spend, and see some things and figure it out, meet some other people. Other opportunities can come out of touring and going to all of these locations. So I just think it's a great opportunity. Um, Now, what if somebody says, well, I don't want to tour. I want to move to New York and do wardrobe. What's that path look like? Not
Well,
touring.
my path was, I already had a card, so I transferred in. So my
Right.
path is going to be different than somebody that is moving
Right.
here. And even that has changed. Um, you have to be a resident here 6 months, a year,
Yes. I believe it's 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And then you can register with the union.
Hmm.
If you get a job, you can get fast tracked. Um, there are, you can do that. A lot of people start off Broadway and then they start working their way in to
Hmm.
doing things on Broadway. And it's after so many hours, and I'm blanking on that number.
That's
Uh,
okay. I put you on the spot. I didn't.
no, it's okay. And because I just looked at this recently,
I
but
will tell you this though. What I have looked at recently is if you go to the dresser's website, all that information is there. If you
it
go to
is.
the website in New York, it's all there. It talks about what the requirements are, and they even have informational sessions. So I think I want to say it's once a month, maybe.
That
Uh,
sounds right.
but they have informational sessions that you can go and ask questions and hear them talk about that process. Um, so it's not a beyond the reach, you know.
It's not. It's a lot more doable than if you want to be in local one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You have to make so much money in so many years.
right. Yeah,
Uh, it's very much more doable for 764.
yeah, yeah. So, um, anyway, just, want people to know that, like, if this is something you're interested in, pursue it. I think
And there's a
there's
lot of off Broadway.
opportunity. Yeah.
There's a lot of off Broadway, and a lot of people have transitioned from off Broadway to Broadway. In fact, one of the guys that I worked with on the Wiz, he missed our first day of load-in because he was getting sworn in to the union because he'd done a lot of stuff off Broadway.
Yeah.
And he finally got in.
Love it.
I I also want to say that a lot of people look down on wardrobe as a profession. Why would you want to be a dresser? Why, it's just a dresser, it's just wardrobe. Well, that's just as important as the people making the clothes or the designer or anything. I was in New York City at a museum exhibit, and somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here? I can't believe you're here." And I was like, "Oh, I'm head of wardrobe at Sarkana at Radio City Music." Oh, wardrobe. And I just like me being the catty person I am, I looked at him and I said, "Yes, and I make $150,000 a year." And I just got that look because I was like, "How dare you? What I do is just as important as the designer's work." You know, it takes a village, and wardrobe is integral to that.
Right. I'm particularly, the designer, the show opens and they may check back in on it. They may, but we're making sure that every audience every night has the full experience, right? And it's only with wardrobe that happens,
Yeah.
you know.
You'll even get that with your own crew.
Yeah.
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 Sadly.
Yeah.
Sadly, you'll
So,
get that from other departments on your
Yeah.
crew.
yeah.
Yeah.
So don't let people poo poo on that.
Yeah, I say those things come out of ignorance. It's a lack of understanding. I think putting on clothes, how hard can that be? And in fact, it can be very challenging when you have,
Well,
20 seconds.
Moving limbs.
Right.
it's more than putting on clothes. You are a therapist. You are a soothsayer. You
You are a
are a,
confidant.
Yep.
yeah. Oftentimes, wardrobe will know that somebody's pregnant before their husband knows,
Yeah.
because they're like, "Hey, my costumes, blah, blah, blah. I'm pregnant. Don't tell nobody." And so you have to sit on that and not tell anybody. you know. Um, and so I think it's one of the most important jobs.
You're also an assistant,
Hmm.
like pre seamless days. I was the one calling the restaurant, ordering food for my lady, and then I would go downstairs and get it and take it to her room.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And when you're star dressing and you're like at Broadway level dressing, tips come along with all of that. Um, the good people tip. Um, when you're star dressing, usually the star will tip you some cash money.
the ensemble will too, if you know, but that's hit or miss sometimes.
Yeah, when I did the Phantom tour in grad school, I got a call to come be the men's ensemble dresser. I walked out of there with like $1,200 in tips by the end of the month. I was, being a poor grad student, I was overjoyed.
All right. We only have just a few minutes left, so I want to open it up. And if we have any questions from our audience, our viewers, if you want to pop those into the chat, um, we can answer any questions that you have. Um, bring them, bring them. While I'm waiting to see if any questions pop up. Liz, I know you worked on a pre-Broadway of a show. So
I
before
did.
it went to Broadway and then went with the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how did that process um were there changes that came during that out of town tryout time in terms of the show and the tracks and what costumes were in and costumes were out or
Oh man, you're asking to have me remembered 10
I
years
know it's
ago.
been a minute.
Um, I'm trying. I would actually be able to answer some questions better about the Wiz.
Okay.
Definitely some costume changes.
Uh-huh.
And they restaged. They restaged the opening number. They restaged the opening of Act Two. They redesigned costumes for. Oh, they redesigned what we called Treme, which is when Dorothy lands in Oz. Um, and the Winkies when they are no longer oppressed and they're free. That was a redesign of costumes. So things can change. Numbers can get cut, numbers can be added. For the last ship, we changed some jackets. Like I remember running for jackets once we got to New York, because they decided they wanted a different jacket. So in the middle of rehearsal, we'd go running. Because of course our stock wasn't backstage, it was upstairs in the balcony lobby. Um,
Yeah.
you got to put things where they fit during tech. Um, Sting did write a specific song for one of the women that wasn't originally part of the show, but I think you saw that because it was the opening of Act Two.
Yes.
Um, I think staging changed, but
Yeah.
not many
Not
of this.
significantly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least for the last ship.
Like again, that just continued rolling with it, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's always going to be a thing when it comes to wardrobe.
We did have when I was on Soul Doctor, because during previews, when you're here on Broadway, and even when you do an out of town trial, you rehearse during the day. So the crew will be in at 8 a.m. to do a work call. Then the cast gets called in about noon, and then you rehearse from noon to 5. And that's when changes happen. And when I was on Soul Doctor, we had a whole new song that got put in that day for our lead guy. And he was like, how am I gonna? And so he got permission to write the words on the set so he could If you needed to, you could just look down or
Yeah.
look over this pole and see words.
Yeah.
Because you can do something in the afternoon and it goes in that night.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you rehearse it in the afternoon, there are no changes. You rehearse it again, and then the changes go in the second night, if you're lucky.
Oh, poor guy. All right. So our last, we just got a couple minutes left. What do you love about doing wardrobe? Like, what do you love about your job?
It becomes a family.
Yeah.
And when you're there a lot and you miss a lot of holidays with your own family,
Uh-huh.
so you have your maid family,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a short amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
I got a picture from Liz the other day, with her and a friend of mine that we both worked with while I was in New York on Zarkana when Liz worked with me. And I got a lovely little photo with her and Raw, and they were working on the same show again, and
We're barcoding.
they're working together.
We're working
Uh,
together. Yeah, yeah.
Together.
And you're
Right.
doing something that I love, so
Yes.
that I'm
Yes.
obsessed with. And so, you can go years without seeing somebody, and all of a sudden they're on the same show. When Phantom came to my grad school, I was walking in for my first day, and I walk in the door and somebody's coming out the wardrobe door, and it's Dwayne, who was a sound guy on Fosse, who was my roommate, who I didn't know was on the show. And like literally we bumped into each other and was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. And then he's like, can I stay with you? And I was like, yeah, heck yeah. And so, instant pickup.
37 people in theater.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so true. You'll run into people over and over again throughout your career, which is pretty cool. So, well, I want to thank you both for taking time to chat with us tonight, Randy and Liz. We appreciate your insights and we appreciate your time. So, thank you so
Oh,
much. Oh,
somebody said I don't have any questions, but really enjoyed listening.
awesome. All right. Thank you. Thanks. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.